This is the Morning Tempo Podcast. I am your host, Roberto Hernandez. On this podcast, I have conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial with a slant toward creativity. My guest for today's episode is Mike Volkin. Mike is a speaker, trainer, Army veteran, and author of 5 books, one of them a bestseller. He has built and sold 4 companies. We talk about that, including one that didn't go so well. He spent 8 years in the U.S. Army as a nuclear, biological, and chemical operations sergeant, and he joined the Army 3 days after 9/11. Can you imagine? He was awarded an Army Commendation Medal while serving overseas. He's the owner and lead instructor at Freelancer Masterclass. He loves tennis. We talk about that as it relates to leadership. And also, we talk about his Freelancer School podcast. And he has a special offer for you, which we'll discuss in this episode. But if you want to just check that out, you can go to freelancermasterclass.com/free to find out more about that. Here is me and Mike Volkin. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Awesome. So, first of all, as I like to say, Mike, thank you for spending some of your Friday with me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me. It's an honor, actually.
Well, thank you. And we were, before we hitting the proverbial record button, we were talking about the fact that you're in Santa Rosa, and I have a lot of business ties there and a love for wine there in that area as well. Cool. So it's kind of amazing to me that we hadn't met before. Even when I looked at your picture online, I'm like, I think I know this guy.
Oh, really? Interesting. Well, next time you're in town, let me know. I'll send you. We'll meet up at a good winery or something.
That sounds good.
Do a wine tasting.
I like that.
Or beer tasting. We have really good microbrews here, too.
You do. I like both of those ideas, so I'll keep that in mind for sure. Why don't we start with something that I did not plan to talk about, and maybe it'll be a surprise for you, but I want to talk about tennis for a moment. It came up because for whatever reason I mentioned football, or one of us mentioned football, and you, I think I asked you if you were a New England fan because that's where you grew up or where you're originally from, and anyway, you were telling me about the exorbitant amount of hours that you spent watching football years ago, and that now you are finally devoting those hours to something you really love, which is tennis.
Yes.
I wanted to bring it up because probably because I was thinking of a couple of books, one of which I haven't even read yet. It's the Andre Agassi book, but there was also one, oh my gosh, the title is eluding me. She's the Russian player who...
Maria Sharapova.
Thank you. I read
Sharapova.
Yeah. I read her biography. Pretty interesting. But I've also heard before I got my hands on that one, these kind of parallels between tennis in particular, and I think it's kind of this. It can be this way with any sport, but the not parallels, but tie-ins with life and business. And I was just curious to know if there is some facet of tennis for you that lends itself to some bigger picture of your life or your business.
That would be a great conversation, and hopefully I'd give a good answer for that. I already have some things I would love to talk about regarding that. So,
let's hear it, man. Go ahead. Tell me.
All right. I didn't know if you wanted to wait till we were recording or what, but
we're recording, man.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
I had no idea. All right. So in terms of tennis and being an entrepreneur, the two actually go hand in hand. I mean, with tennis, most of the time it's singles, but you're one-on-one. And when you approach a court, it's almost like your battlefield, like you're approaching an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you own a business and you're approaching another company, and you want to beat that company at their own game, right? Given sometimes your competition may have way more resources than you, way more skill sets than you, a bigger budget than you, whatever. You can think about tennis in that same respect. So when I approach a problem as an entrepreneur, I approach it much like I would approach an opponent in tennis. So in tennis, you walk up to a court, you have the same lines, the same space as everyone else, as your opponent, right? Your job is to utilize that space that you have better than your opponent. And depending on the way you look at the court, the angles that are available to you are different. For every shot, for every point is unique, just like being an entrepreneur. Every problem is unique. Every angle, the way you approach it is unique. So many entrepreneurs are so distracted with what they do now with their cell phones and Slack going off and Skype binging, and it's just you're being distracted on all these different levels. There's an amount of focus and concentration that's needed as an entrepreneur to win the game, and tennis has just some amazing parallels to that. Not to mention, I mean, the more competitive you get with tennis, as you can imagine, the more difficult it becomes. You have people, opponents that I play that are so refined with their game. They can hit a dime on the other side of the court if they wanted to. I mean, their control, the power, the way they move to the ball is just amazing. And I see that parallel when I approach problems that have to do with anything, whether it's hiring other entrepreneurs to help me with some work, whether it's outsourcing work, whether it's managing other employees. There are different ways that different people approach problems, that they analyze things. And it's interesting as an entrepreneur how everything comes together just like you would approach a single point in tennis or the overall game strategy, because there's different strategies for every point depending on where you're at in the score. And there's different strategies from the match overall, your overall strategy, which you're trying to stick to, which is your long-term strategy. So myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I make marketing strategies for other companies. And I approach from marketing from a long-term and a short-term perspective. So there's a lot of parallels between tennis and being an entrepreneur that help me both on and off the court.
That was a better answer than I could have hoped for, and actually just lends itself to all kinds of things to dive into, and I may do some more of that, or do some of that. So, yeah. One of the things I immediately noticed about you is that you are, one of your missions in your entrepreneurial world is to help people with freelancing careers. Can you talk a little bit about why that is your particular passion?
Yeah, so about a year ago, I went through kind of a rebirth of my career. My house had burned down from a wildfire in Northern California in 2017. My wife and I lost everything we owned, even the socks on our feet. We left at 2 a.m. Our dog actually saved our life, woke us up, ran out of the house in less than a minute, grabbed nothing besides our pets and one of our cars. We piled in and left. And then, stuff like that kind of makes you reevaluate your life and like what you're doing, what your mission is, what you want to be known for. It's kind of morbid to think, as I like to give this actually to my entrepreneur and freelancer students, this exercise. Like, if people are at your funeral, what do you want them to say about you? That you worked for some company for 20 years and you collected a steady paycheck and no one really remembers the work you did. You're easily replaceable, like whatever that may be. Or do you want to be known as somebody who created your own work, made your own business, did what you wanted to do with your life? So I reevaluated where I was at and really thought about the core of what I like to do, what makes me happy, what makes me think that I'd like to be in the office on a middle of a beautiful Saturday afternoon as opposed to a Tuesday morning. Like, there's no difference between the two. What is that passion? And it really came down to coaching. I want to be known, at my funeral, I want people to say, Mike is the guy who launched 10,000 careers, got people out of that corporate rat race, got people to realize what their life potential is, and just kind of Mike helped people melt their life goal with their work environment. So many people nowadays are just shuffled into, you have to work 8 to 5, you have to go get a corporate job, you have to get a steady paycheck, you have to go on 2 weeks vacation. Like, they fit into like this bucket. And I want to help people break the mold of that, even if they're just side hustling for a little bit, just to get used to doing freelancing and consulting. And that's why I started Freelancer Masterclass.
And was there any, so I heard, coaching is the passion, and I get that too. It's so much, there's a lot of reward from that. Was there a light bulb moment or some, and by the way, I'm very sorry to hear about the fire. It sounds like a super tragic event turned into something great. But was there any, specific point in time or thought process that led you to a niche with freelancing? Because it sounds like the Coaching was really what drove the whole thing. And you could have gone a lot of different directions, but you definitely kind of niched it here. And I bet you probably still talk to all kinds of people or offered to. But yeah, what was it that led you to that particular niche?
I think it was the fact that I've coached so many people over the years that I looked at which people I like to coach the most. And those are the people that call me up and say, hey, I'm doing this full time, or hey, I just secured my first $5,000 a month contract, or $10,000 or whatever it is. I've had so many people just like thank me, like, hey, thanks. I would have never been able to do this within, a month. And I never pictured myself a month ago being able to service a client for $5,000 a month. And that is what gives me the joy. So it's like, I'm now able to quit my job and do this on my own. I'm now able to spend more time with my kids. I'm now able to do this during the day and work my own hours. So I've helped a lot of companies. I've helped a lot of agency owners. I've helped a lot of consultants. But really what gives me the most joy is taking somebody who always wanted to be an entrepreneur, or maybe even just started to be an entrepreneur, but wasn't able to break over a certain, like, hey, I can't make more than $1,000 a month, or I can't seem to charge more than $50 an hour, whatever it is. And I help them double or triple their income virtually with just some easy tips. That's what gives me the most joy, because those people I can make the biggest impact on.
I like that. Yeah. And okay, so backing up to tennis, one of the things that I guess stuck for me, you were talking about distractions that entrepreneurs face, and you were paralleling, the space on a tennis court, the space that we operate in as entrepreneurs. And I presumed, I might have kind of missed it, but I presumed that there are potential distractions on the court as a tennis player. But I am always fascinated in hacks for fending off distraction. And lest I forget, I'll share one little thing that was, I see a lot of the same stuff over and over, but one little thing I picked up recently, and I can't tell you where, but we know you mentioned phones, devices, and we know those are a huge problem. And I've been experimenting lately with the, so I have an older iPhone, and I believe it's a 6, and I know all of them do this, but in the general settings, there's an accessibility setting to basically turn the screen black and white and get rid of all colors to help mitigate some of the distractions. Now, I had already turned off almost all, like I don't get any of the button alerts, the badge alerts. I do get some persistent banners, but I find those don't usually distract me. And if they are, I can just flip my phone over where I can't see it. I have nothing making noise at me anymore. And this has kind of been a process, but I have been experimenting with the, basically turning the screen black and white through display accommodations. And it's making a difference. You don't realize, though, sometimes what you can't see if you don't have the color. So sometimes I have to flip back. But digressing, but getting back to the question is, what are some of the, I guess, best things you use or you recommend, or maybe it's even some of the things you most commonly see in the world of distractions that we face?
Well, the first thing I most commonly see is when people get to work, they clear their emails first, because it's something actionable and it's satisfying to know that you're at inbox 0 and now you can start your work. The problem with that is that emails pretty much are defined by action items that other people are demanding of you, of your time, right? And during a workday, you want to command your own time. So right away, you're starting off by gifting your time to somebody. And the other problem with that is usually most people don't get to inbox 0. By the time you get close, maybe your audience can relate to this. Maybe you get to like 5 emails left and then 4 more start pouring in, so it's like you're on your email all day long. And there's a law, it's called Parkinson's law. And it basically states work can fulfill its own time. So you can spend your entire day at the end of the workday thinking, what did I just get done? I just answered a bunch of emails. Some people came to my office and interrupted me. I went on lunch, and then I did the whole same cycle over again. So it's like you can spend weeks, months, even your entire career just having distracted work, not really accomplishing anything meaningful. So what I do to stay focused now, which has just changed my world, I now get more done in 1 week than I do in 3 months. And I thought I was productive before. I thought I was fast at answering emails, but it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with shuffling information from one person to another. I do a couple things. I do time blocking, and that goes beyond the scope of this podcast. I could talk for an hour about time blocking, but it's a pretty simple concept. From the highest level, you take your calendar and you block time, not just for meetings or appointments, but you block time for actual tasks. And those tasks should be blocked in 25-minute blocks. And you might say, well, Mike, I use Google Calendar and time blocks are 30 minutes. So what you do there is you do a 25-minute task with a 5-minute break. And you're utilizing at that point the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique says basically stay distracted or don't be distracted. So free of distractions. So don't just move your phone outside of your arm's reach, because you're still going to hear it bing and bong, and you're going to hear the light on the screen, on your screen go off. You want to take it out of your room, wherever you're at. And I want you to focus 25 minutes distraction free and take a 5-minute break. That gets your brain in a deep work focused cycle. And if you try that just once a day, you'll be amazed at how much you can do in 25 minutes. But now I'm at about 4 hours right now, where I can do a 25-minute on, 5 minutes off. And then every fourth cycle, you do a 30-minute break. And that way your brain gets in this rhythm of being ultra focused, ultra concentrated. For anybody who has to do a lot of writing, for anybody who has to do a lot of analysis with numbers, for anybody who has to do a lot of coding, this will change your world, this cycle of 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break. You might think, well, Mike, I'm a coder. I need to just get in there. I need to do it. I just knock out 10 hours of coding in one day and my eyes are just foggy at the end of the day and I can't think straight. Yeah, that's right. Because after your third or fourth hour of doing stuff like that, you are becoming very, very inefficient and slow at what you do. By doing 25-minute sprints, you're like a fine-tuned car, just like always, just your gas pedal is just floored because you're giving yourself breaks and your mind just resets. And I don't mean a break like go get a drink. I mean a break like go for a walk, do something different than what you were doing. If you're sitting at your computer, then go for a walk. If you're the type of person that is up all day on your feet, a break for you would be sitting down. Like do something different than what you were doing. And that kind of cycle will keep you highly efficient throughout the day. And you're going to find yourself commanding time rather than time being commanded of you.
I love that. So I'm not a zero inbox person. I think it's for suckers, but that's a great one. I see, I'm actually surprised at how many people still exert so much energy on emails in the manner that you described. And I'm personally familiar with. I've seen it in action. I've had friends talk to me about it, the Pomodoro technique. But you just inspired me to try it. I do time block.
Good.
But I have not. I've never really implemented it. I love the idea of doing. I have been thinking for some time, like I need to get better at focused work. Which is what you mentioned happens that you're training yourself for. So I'm going to give it a try. I really appreciate that tip, and I'm sure many others will too. Go ahead.
Do you use Google Chrome?
No, I use Firefox, but I have Chrome, of course.
Okay. Well, I was going to say Google Chrome. There might be an extension for Firefox and other browsers, but there's a few Pomodoro apps, which will basically it's just a timer in the upper right-hand part of your screen. And you just click it, and it just starts clicking down. It's a hidden, you don't see the seconds tick down, but it'll tell you when your 25 minutes is up, and it'll tell you when your 5-minute break is up, and then it'll tell you every third or fourth cycle when you take a 30-minute break. Like it's a really good to help you keep pace, so you don't have to constantly be thinking of a clock and your time, while you think. Because the whole purpose of that is you don't want to be thinking about time, because that's just another resource that your brain has to use to think about. And when you're doing focused work, you have to stay 100% concentrated to really get great work done.
Yeah, thanks for the tip. I did put a what am I trying to say? Mac OS timer on for a similar reason a while back. I haven't been using it, but I just did a quick search for Firefox add-ons, and there are some Pomodoro extensions. So yeah, great tip. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Very
You're
good.
welcome.
So,
do you listen to music when you work?
No, I'm a musician.
Yeah.
So I have another podcast, by the way, for any of you listening. It's called the Unstarving Musician Podcast, and it's hilarious, the parallels between independent musicians and entrepreneurs, because they are one and the same. But But I'm a musician, and I think, and I've been doing it for so long, I think that over time, well, I know what music can do to me for one thing. I have experimented though with listening to certain types of music at a low volume, but I've never been a person who just feels they need to have music when they work. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's usually a common question I get when talking about focus, because a lot of people do listen to music at work. If you want to use extra brainwaves and be a little bit less concentrated, there is a company, I've heard of, like Brainfm. They claim that their music could make you give you deeper concentration. I don't know what the validity is behind that, but generally, if you do want to listen to music while you work, it should be lyrics free and hopefully as much as possible pattern free. Because if you're listening to music that has patterns to it, your brain uses its neurons to pick up that pattern and cycle through those patterns. Yet again, taking away from some of your concentration.
I wonder if that particular effect is worse for musicians, because they're just they're used, we kind of do that anyway. Mm-hmm. So it could be
very true.
But I don't know, there are a lot of people that just love listening to music who maybe are not so inclined to play an instrument, but they do. I'm quite certain what you said is 110% true for many people who aren't musicians. So yeah. Well, good tip. And did you say that, did the company or streaming service you mentioned, is it Brainfm? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Brainfm. I'm not a subscriber. I've done their free trial, but they claim to have pattern-free music that helps you get to deeper concentration. I'm not an advocate of theirs by any means. I'm just mentioning them as a company that I've heard of. Yeah,
and I know I'm one of these people who has tried many different streaming services over the years. I'm currently a Spotify user, but all of these services have playlists that are for like studying, concentrating. Mm-hmm. So I have played around with those from time to time. Okay, shifting gears here a bit. You have something listed on your LinkedIn profile, and I'm pretty sure I know how the answer will go, and maybe most people who are listening know how the answer is going to go, but I thought it might be fun, at least for some listeners to, and for me, in spite of the fact that I think I know how the answer is going to go, to hear you talk about what it is to be a fractional CMO.
Yeah, there's a divide of small businesses and medium businesses and large businesses. Medium and large businesses usually have the resources to be able to hire a marketing leader, someone who usually goes for $200,000 to $300,000 plus a year, very well paid, salaried position where one person is working for a company for a good salary. So the small businesses don't have that resource. So typically the way a small business grows is they'll hire a marketing intern or I don't want to say a low-level marketer, but usually an entry-level marketer, like a social media specialist or someone that does some postings here and there. Somebody that doesn't require much skill, right? 0 to 3 years of experience. But the reason why a lot of small businesses fail, and the majority of them, are because of a lack of marketing. Usually the entrepreneur who started it, the CEO, has to scrap and do their own marketing. So what a fractional CMO is, someone like myself will come into these small businesses who don't necessarily have the resources to hire someone for $200,000 or $300,000. But I'll get on a monthly fee or even work hour by hour for coaching purposes. And I will guide either the owner or their existing marketing department on strategy, high-level strategy, to be able to get them on the right footing. Because a lot of small businesses, marketing makes businesses. And a lot of small businesses don't know how to market properly. So they can hire somebody like myself to fill that gap for a fraction of the price they would to hire a full-time CMO. I love it. Yes, I can go to a company, I could command a salary like that, but I love doing it because I'm working with a whole bunch of different companies. I can work with a SaaS company in the morning and an e-commerce company in the afternoon. I can work with a social enterprise in the morning, a company that gives back to charity for every dollar they bring in, or I could work with a high-tech law firm in the afternoon. Like, there's so much variety in my day. I just love it, and it allows me to just get a whole bunch of experience in just tons of different industries. I've worked with companies in over 20 different countries and dozens of different industries, and I don't think very many marketers can say that. So I pride myself on my versatility as a marketer because of that.
I noticed a marketing theme in your career. Mm-hmm. I saw you've already used the word agency, and I saw the language of the marketing language in your background. Can you give me a little bit of the oral version of how you found yourself in marketing and how it has evolved for you and kind of driven your business today?
Yeah. You ready for this one? Osama bin Laden. He's the reason why I got into marketing, very indirectly, but I'll tell you the story. So the terrorist attacks, of course, 9/11 is what he's known for, or was known for. I joined the Army like 3 days after 9/11, just on a whim. I was a corporate guy, marketing guy, and actually I was a scientist at the time, but I was interested in marketing to some extent, but never really did it professionally. So I went to basic training a couple months after that, actually less than that, about a month after that, got back, wound up writing a book on things I could have done better to prepare for military basic training. I wrote it while I was deployed in Iraq, and a publisher picked up the book. Made a website for the book shortly after the publisher picked it up, and went to bed. Once I published the website, I woke up with 6 orders, and I was like, cool, I made money while I was sleeping. This is kind of neat. So then I learned marketing. I learned how to SEO. I did some SEOing. I outreached to military.com. The book, by the way, is called Ultimate Basic Training Guidebook, and 10 years later is still in print. It became a bestseller, but military.com started promoting it. I went to bed a couple weeks after pushing my website, would wake up with like 50 or 60 orders a day. It was really cool. And I wound up teaching myself marketing to get that book out there. And eventually, companies started hiring me to do marketing for them, their authors and companies. And the rest is history. Eventually, I worked my way up after 10 years to start leading marketing departments, marketing strategy, hiring marketing personnel, all that kind of good stuff. So that's kind of a high-level view of my journey from 9/11 all the way to today.
Thank you for your service, by the way. And
you're welcome.
Wow. Also, I don't even know the words, but hats off for your call to action.
Thanks.
You
Thanks.
just went in head first or feet first, whatever, to help out. That's amazing.
I did kind of a rash decision, but it worked out.
Hey, we're lucky to have you here today to talk about it too.
Thanks.
So, is it safe to say that experience, before the book, or maybe you started? If you said you started writing it possibly during your stint in the military, but what I wanted to ask is it safe to say that your military experience lent a lot to, or gave you a lot to help you in your life after the military and where you are now?
Absolutely. When we were talking about tennis, I was going to bring that up. Military mostly helped me with leadership. Growing up, I was a guy who would sit in the back of the class. Hopefully the teacher didn't call on me. I'm very much introverted. I got to the military, took classes on leadership, but also learned how to be a leader in practicality. And even in Iraq, I was a sergeant. I led some field exercises and whatnot. So it definitely helped me become a leader, and also helped me manage other people. Lead by doing is my style. So a lot of people, clients would ask me, when I hire you as a strategist, does that mean that I'm going to have to hire somebody else to do the marketing? I generally say yes and no. Yes, for the benefit of your budget, you don't want to be paying somebody with my bill rate to go making email marketing or doing social posting. But at the same time, I always like to get my hands dirty, because marketing changes so fast. If you're not in it, if you're not in Facebook ads, if you're not doing Google ads or social postings, then you're going to be missing out on a lot of features, and you're going to become archaic really fast. So I learned all that, leadership skills from the military.
Nice. And what a great question that you get when you're out doing marketing consultant with an equally great response.
Thanks. Yeah.
What do you mean by leader in practicality?
Well, there's lots of different styles of leaderships, right? And what I like to do is, rather than just boss people around, which unfortunately is the most common types of leadership, leadership and practicality is really just getting out there and learning. Before you're able to lead, you have to be able to know what you're doing. So I would never hire somebody for a position that I wouldn't be able to do myself. And that is basically me being able to feel comfortable. In order to lead and manage, I have to be able to do something. So when I say practicality, I mean almost like you're in the field doing something, as in the Army doing something. I wouldn't feel comfortable leading a team to be able to do something without being able to do it myself. So
Okay. Yeah. I suppose I'd heard the term or the phrase before, but thanks for the for the breakdown. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes
You're
sense.
welcome.
So I read in your bio that you've built and sold a few companies. Can you talk about those businesses a little bit and maybe why they sold and how those experiences went for you in any of the cases that you can share?
Yeah, well, I mean, referring to the book that I just referred to, it was a bestseller. I wrote 3. Those are I've written 5 books, but those 3 books were kind of a trilogy. So somebody would buy a book to learn how to survive basic training, but then they'd also buy the workbook associated with that. And then they'd also buy a book that they bring with them the basic training. So instead of 1 sale, I'd usually get 3 sales. So that particular business turned into an online membership site for basic people going to basic training. They can get educational videos. They'll get live sessions with me and other people going to basic training. I wound up selling that company. And there was another, this was not a digital company, but it was a real estate company. I formed a new business model around real estate. And I found when I was a real estate broker back in the day, I learned that, a lot of the best real estate agents are broke. They might be great at being real estate agents, but they don't know how to market themselves. So I created a business model. I said, hey, listen, you just focus on being a real estate agent. I'll focus on getting you the business. So I created a central technology center. I built these agents' websites. I did their SEO. I brought them in leads. And that was its own business model. And I actually wound up franchising it. I grew the company to hundreds of agents in 5 different states, 15 offices, and then an investor group picked it up, purchased it, and actually ran the company to ground. It's still around, but it's just a shell of what it once was when I was running it. But that was, honestly, I wish I didn't sell it, but I wish I did. That was a controversial sale for me. They approached me with an amount of money that would allow me to get out of my situation I was in. The real estate market at the time was just terrible, and there was no end in sight. It was during the big crash in 2008. So I wound up getting out of it, but at the same time, I wish I didn't sell it to them because it was such a great company and had such potential, and they ran it into the ground. So, but since then, I've built and sold a couple companies. One of them was a tennis company. Tennis players are their racket. It's an extension of their arm, and there's so many tennis players playing with the wrong type of racket. So what I did was I created an algorithm that you answered 10 questions about your tennis game, and it went out and it searched the best available racket on the market for you. And that was an advertising play. It was free to the user. I think it's still around. It's called tennisracket.me. Yet again, the person who purchased that kind of ran into the ground. I don't even know if the algorithm's being updated, but that was a really fun business for me because I was able to help so many tennis players, and it helps their game immediately when you have the right racket in your hand. It's almost like Harry Potter getting that right wand in his hand and everything clicks, Same thing with tennis players. Yeah. So, those are just some examples of some businesses that I've built and sold. Having
mentioned a couple of those scenarios where the business did not have a life after the sale or had a limited life after the sale, or as you said, they got run into the ground, I'm really curious to know when if the opportunity presents itself again, did you pick up things that would help you or help those businesses have a better chance of having a longer life after you? I don't know if it's even was in your control or not. But what did you learn?
That is a good question. Yeah. So one of the companies I did not mention that I built and sold was Strength Stack 52, which is around and it's thriving even better. And the difference between that company and the 3 other companies I sold was that I played a role in that. I retained a portion of the company even after they paid me a cash settlement or a cash buyout. I wound up staying on for a year as an advisor. And that made a big difference because it was more than just, here's your check, here's the company, thanks so much, see you later. I was actually able to provide guidance along the way. And it wasn't so much my guidance that made this person successful who owns it. It was his initiative, but it was also his continued collaboration with me, which allowed me to help him know what products would work, what products he should expand to, the history of the company, and why I did things a certain way, or why emails are structured this way, why newsletters are structured that way, things like that, which really help a company provide continued growth. So that company is doing very well today. And I probably would structure any other company that I'm going to sell in the future the same way.
Can you say the name of that
because
company?
Because that would
again?
ensure success.
Sorry
yes, it is Strength Stack. It's actually, the domain is stack52.com.
Okay. Great. Thanks. And was that, the way that played out, was that largely because of a conscious decision that you had made, or was it a little bit fortuitous that you ended up staying on, or maybe it was a combination of the two?
Yeah. It was just a good entrepreneur who approached me. He was a customer of mine, and he said, I love your product. I think it's got legs. I think you should do this, 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 and this. I'm like, you know what? Those are great ideas. But at the time, I had a pretty good marketing agency. This was always a part-time job for me, part-time business for me. It was an idea in my head. It's a fitness product that travelers use, right? Mostly travelers. So he bought the company, and it was his foresight that said, can you stay on? I'd like to collaborate with you. And it was a great idea because it helped him ensure success. And now it's a full-time job for him.
So I would imagine that
he quit his 6-figure job to take on the company, and now he's making more money than ever managing that company.
Oh, neat. I would imagine that there were just some things that you inherently learned from the way that played out. If you sell, one of your businesses in the future, I also assume that you'll have that as a story to tell and maybe a recommendation. But
yeah.
Did you maybe more than anything learn about your buyer, like the buyer that you that you should or shouldn't work with?
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely tell who a good entrepreneur is and who isn't. Like the one that purchased my tennis racket company. I hope she's not listening, but honestly, she came to me with an offer. She told me all the stuff she wanted to do. That's great. She is going to split her business 50-50 with another friend of hers. She was a big tennis enthusiast. She loved the business model. Everything was great. She was an entrepreneur. She started businesses before. Okay, everything sounds good. It checks out. The payment was worked out to where she would make the second half of the payment in 6 months. Well, 5 months later, she determined she didn't want to make the second half of the payment. I said, why? She's like, well, my business partner and I split up. I said, you know what? Tough luck. Sorry. That wasn't the condition of the sale. Eventually, she did pay it, but she was complaining the entire time. We almost had to get lawyers involved. And the reason for that was because her business partner wasn't doing what they had agreed to do. And she was saying that her business partner was a marketing and salesperson, and she doesn't know how to do any of that. So I made every concession possible. I helped her months after the business was sold, and I reached out, can I help you with this? She consistently said, no, my business partner will take care of it. Well, guess what? Her business partner wound up having twins. She got busy, lost interest in the business, and now she's on her own with a business she has no idea how to market or sell. So I would, in the future, make sure that a company would, or a person that purchased my business would have all the necessary resources in place to make it successful from the get-go without having to rely on a single key person that if that person left, then they would have problems growing the business.
What great business and life lessons.
Yeah.
You probably, I can't imagine the level of confidence, the change, that you must feel having gone through those experiences and, even comparing the two prior to today in your head, just like the things that you'd look for, the red lights and all that. Yeah.
Partnerships are tough. I always approach partnerships with caution because generally keeping a balance between work and pay and contributions, it's rarely even. And usually one person feels overwhelmed and the other person feels taken advantage of.
Yeah. So. Yeah, they are tricky. Having had recent personal experience, they are very tricky, and you can learn some hard lessons really fast if you don't know what you're doing. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to freelancers for some of the time we have left. So, Freelancer Masterclass. That for me, this is your flagship product. There's a podcast.
Yes.
There's freelancermasterclass.com, a lot of social destinations or the usual social destinations for it. I noted in myself one question pertaining to freelancers, but and I don't know if it's a good one, but let's see where it goes. But what have you found, or today, what do you find most freelancers struggle with?
Yeah, there are, the main thing is, and it's not money, it's taking that leap and making it a full-time career. Very few freelancers are full-time. I'd say probably 6 to 8% of the freelancers I talk to are actually full-time freelancers. Most of them are side hustlers. They do nights and weekends. They love what they do. They look forward to the nights and weekends where they can work with clients or even find new clients. But actually making that leap and really learning how to prospect for clients of their own, because most freelancers don't know how to get clients on their own. And that's why in Freelancer Masterclass, I focus on that. I tell them all of my tips and tricks and procedures and how to automate all that and how to do that. So much so to the fact that I'm on the homepage of Upwork, which is the largest freelancer site in the world. They took notice of me, and I created a whole process around getting clients to stay satisfied, getting clients to continue to order from you. I rarely lose a client. Usually I'll be the one that'll get rid of a client for various reasons like communication. But most freelancers have that issue of like, I just don't know how to get clients. I'm doing side hustle work, but those are people that come to me and they somehow magically find me through a friend or family or member or something like that. They're referrals. How do I go out and get clients and make my own career? That's the biggest problem. They rarely approach me with how do I make 6 figures or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not super surprised to hear that. I would imagine that one of the things they commonly have really going for them, freelancers that are in the midst of that struggle, is they are doing the type of work that can afford them to feed the little economic engine they need to get started as far as doing it the right way, and it's putting a little spend towards seeking clients and the other things that come around it. Is that pretty accurate? Yes,
exactly. Very accurate. You hit the nail on the head right there.
That's cool. And I was just sort of imagining this part that that's probably a conversation that you have fairly early on that and sort of hits many freelancers, the ones that are at that struggle point, hits them by surprise because they just hadn't given it much thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the point at which a freelancer decides to become full-time is, there's usually a trigger point. Like they hate their job, they hate their boss. They determine that maybe they like their job at one point, they just don't like it anymore. But there's some reason that they usually come to me, and that's usually the trigger point. Says, hey, maybe I should try this freelancing thing full-time. And a lot of times people come to me want to be a consultant. They don't know the difference between freelancing and consulting. So let me just define that real quick. Just to put everybody at ease, because there might be consultants here wondering why I'm not using the word consulting. A freelancer is very similar to a consultant, but freelancing usually has a defined endpoint. When you're hired as a consultant, you're hired on a monthly recurring basis with no specific goal. There's milestones, there's things that define your success, but with a freelancer, it's more project-based. So a client might hire you to do search engine optimization work, and to get them to the top of Google within 6 months, right? Like that's a freelancing job. In 3 months, your job is over and you might be doing more work for them later on, but that is your defined job. As a consultant, you're hired on as an advisory role or mentor role or something. So
yeah,
just to define that for your audience.
No, that's cool. I think it's blurry. It's been a blurry thing for me too. So that's nice. Bonus. And
for most people it is.
Yeah, sure.
I have a freelancer coach that I know who did not know the own definition of that. She was running ads, and I approached her and said, "You're using the word consulting in your ads, but your landing page says freelancer. Like, do you know what the difference is?" And she's like, "No, I thought they were the same." I'm like, "You're a freelancer coach. You know the difference." So I had to explain to her what a freelancer is, and she's a freelancer coach. So it's a little disappointing. So I'd like to get that definition out there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it certainly can help people know where they should or could position themselves. So.
Sure.
So tell me about the podcast. What? How's it going? What was the? Are you enjoying it? What inspired it?
I love it. It feels like I'm shouting in an empty room sometimes. I don't know who's listening. My lack of stats that I have available. And I'm just amazed there hasn't been a company that has stepped up and provided podcasters what they need to evaluate how their podcast is going. But at any rate, I don't know if it's going well or not. I'm sure. What's that?
Who's your host?
It is, well, I host it myself. I just upload the files myself, and I put them directly on iTunes and Google Play and everything. Yeah.
But I mean, who's hosting those files for you?
Oh, WordPress.
You have them.
I just upload them right to my hosting provider through, I think it's Blueberry or something.
Oh, Blueberry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would imagine that they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. We do it once a week.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
You.
Oh, I was going to say, I host it once a week. I make it quick and actionable. It's usually 15 minutes or less.
Mm-hmm.
And they all focus on one topic. Like, I usually do a month in advance the topics. Sometimes I'll interview someone, and most of the time it's going to be tips on, here is how what you should have as a freelancer on your website. Like, this is the way the order of your website should be laid out, or this is how specifically how you get clients on LinkedIn. There'll be different topics. So even though it's probably me shouting in an empty room, I don't know if I'm having 100 people listen to it every episode or two, but I like doing it for myself. Usually I'll transcribe them and turn them into blog posts as well.
I find it odd that you don't get some decent stats from your host Blueberry, because I know they're one of the most highly regarded hosts. So if you haven't done so lately, maybe you should ping them and ask them. Maybe you already have, and it's lame.
I haven't.
I would just ask them, tell them what you told me. And
okay. I need some stats. Yeah.
I'm guessing they're going to say, oh yeah, we have this thing here, and hopefully it will at least help, but maybe it's going to be Nirvana. I don't know. And if cool. not, I'm confident they have something, but if not, I use a company called Libsyn, and they're all about stats, and I wouldn't say it's the perfect world, but they definitely put a lot of resources into stats. They love them, and if you're a stats person, there's definitely stuff there for you to play with, and so
right.
But I think your company.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, I think your company probably does something. Yeah, I would just ask them. They probably have good customer service too. So yeah, I look forward to listening to some episodes. I'm remorsed for not having done so before our conversation today, but I was curious about it, so I dug around. Was looking at the website and went to the Apple Podcast site also to just kind of see the history, number of episodes and all that thing. See how it was going. It looked like when I look at a podcast like yours, I'm like, okay, he's enjoying it because you're still putting out some content, and you have these spurts of where you're putting out a lot of stuff. So that's really great. So are there any big plans for it for this year, or just kind of keep on going? You're enjoying what you're doing.
Well, it's called Freelancer School, by the way, and I do have big plans for it. Seth Godin himself emailed me and said, I want to be on the 100th episode.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to plan on some good questions. I want to stump them really good. So.
That is amazing. What an honor, yeah. You'll be the second person I've interviewed who's had Seth Godin on their podcast. He sounds like such a nice guy. But how awesome that he contacted you.
No, well, he kind of did. I mean, we outreached to him, and he got back to us pretty fast. It was my assistant. And, he said, hit me up in your 100th episode. I'll be your guest. I'm like, okay, great. So technically we contacted him, but he did contact us back, which is something I did not expect.
Sweet. I like it, man. That's a good story. I'll tune in for that one. So that'll be exciting for you. I'm sure I would, it's one of those ones you might get a little nervous for, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm already nervous. I haven't made the questions up yet.
And thanks for
I want to get some brain teasers going for them.
Yeah. And thanks for clarifying the name. It's Freelancer School Podcast, or the Freelancer School Podcast. This and all the other cool stuff you do is on freelancermasterclass.com. And does that lead to your other web property, or is this the one site I should mention? Because it looks like it goes to a lot of places that have everything you've got going on. But is there another site that we need to mention? Because I know you have another one.
Well, I have two. I have a consulting site, which is just my name. It's MikeVolkin.com. So if anybody, I love to do public speaking. If anybody is an event manager or something listening and they want me to give a talk about marketing, or even I love to talk about neuromarketing and neuroplasticity, all that stuff that helps increase focus and concentration and makes you a better entrepreneur. But consulting, fractional CMO work is all done at MikeVolkin.com. Everything else is done at freelancermasterclass.com.
And Volkin, for those of you listening who aren't going to look at the show notes where all this stuff is going to be, is VOLKIN, MikeVolkin.com. That's great. And you and I talked about something that you put together for listeners of the podcast, and I'll let you
I did
share it with them right here.
I have several webinars that have been very popular that I've given. They range anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, but I put together the top 4 webinars all on one page. So you just enter your email and you get one webinar a day. And there's actually, it says 3 webinars on this landing page I'm about to give you, but there's technically 4. So if you go to freelancermasterclass.com/free, you'll get 4 webinars that will all teach you how to make more money, whether you're a side hustler or a full-time freelancer. Everyone is a different class that focuses on making more money.
Very cool. Well, that is a generous offer. Really appreciate it. I hope some people check it out. And it was a real pleasure talking to you. There were a number of topics that we did not even broach today, so I hope that we might be able to do this again, and maybe we can talk about, hey, let's spend an hour talking, discussing this one thing, because there were several things mentioned here, so that would be great for me, so I hope we can make that happen.
Yeah, I'd love to. Just, where to reach me anytime.
I sure do, and I will be talking to you soon about this episode that's coming up. So Mike, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Until next time.